Hello and welcome to Viewpoints. I'm Andrew Phelps. Joining us today is Julie Nations from the City of Memphis Police Department in Memphis, Tennessee. Today, Julie is going to be talking to us about her thesis, Your Faith, My Fear, Countering Consent to Cosmic Positioning. Welcome, Julie, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Julie, this was a very unique title and topic for a thesis. What was it that led you down this path and drove you to do this thesis?
I think initially it was the public response to 911 and what seemed to be a fear of a faith, of an undefined group of people, of a religion. In thinking about that, you couple that with my own questions, my own intrigue, if you will, of how we as Americans handle religion. I think we're taught that it's not a topic of public conversation. And marrying those questions about religion and how we handle, as Americans, how we handle religion and what its role is as the enemy, in this case the jihadists, the attackers on 911, were saying it was all about religion. And I wanted to know what the research said.
Julie, this topic seems like it probably came from a fairly personal place within yourself. Did you find any surprises in doing this research?
I did find surprises, and as far as the personal place, I think whether any individual professes any faith or they profess no faith, I think all of those are personal issues. So I would agree with you that the subject matter is probably personal for everyone. It made it even more intriguing as a research topic to address personal bias and attempt to contain that. As for the surprise, I found it amazing that as Americans, we are tolerant and accepting of a diverse faith-based community. In that, I mean that we're not surprised that all Catholics do not believe the same thing. We're very accepting that one Protestant may accept a social issue, if you will, maybe abortion or maybe capital punishment or maybe gay rights. And a Protestant, we're very accepting that one may stand on one side of an issue of that nature and another of the same denomination or faith sect may stand in an opposing position, and that's a way of life for us. But I found it amazing that when we considered the jihadists, when we considered them, and we considered a monolithic Islamic faith, we considered the Muslim faith as a single entity. They all believed the same thing, that we didn't have the same acceptance. We didn't see them as individuals. And we had a tendency, and do have a tendency, to group them in a negative light. That was the most amazing thing for me, was our in a country based on religious freedom and in a nation of tolerance and diversity, that it became so easy to categorize those at a distance in such a negative light.
This thesis topic, it covers such a broad range of ideas, religion, and the threat that we as Americans feel. If you had to boil down your research and your approach to this thesis into one question, what would you say that question would be? What was it you were trying to find the answer?
I wanted to know if, that's a very good question that you asked me, because I began very broad with this. Can we talk with one another? How do we talk? Do we need to talk? What's our policy development like, and what's it looking like futuristically? And that's too broad. And so what I wanted to know, what I wanted to answer is, do our American faith narratives, our storylines, how we talk to one another, can they and do they impact or influence our counterterrorism efforts? And I went about that looking at historical milestones first. An example of that is the role of religion as the Founding Fathers established this nation and the guiding documents, the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, establishing our rule of law. Secondly, I looked at theoretical perspectives, primarily social identity theory, who is a person, who are a group of people as we peel back the layers of the onion. I looked at positioning theory. And then finally I looked at future implications of faith narratives in counterterrorism. What I found was that our Constitution is worthy of preservation. It allows freedom of religion and from religion. And that's no accident. The Founding Fathers, in a very intuitive way, were able to look forward. They looked forward at a time before women could vote, when African Americans were slaves predominantly. I found that nothing has, in over 200 years, there haven't been any better ideas. Nothing has taken its place. Nothing has superseded it. And it's worthy of our effort to sustain that framework. I found that there are tools to use these faith narratives, our stories, who we are. Nearly 80% of Americans profess a faith, but nearly that same percentage profess a lack of literacy about what they believe. Each of us about what we believe. I do suggest that it's impossible for us to have useful dialogue with an enemy, in a counter effort, attempting to change hearts and minds of the other, if we don't know ourselves. So the tools I found and I suggest are Ali Moghadam's omniculturalism. Basically, that's an alternative to assimilation, an alternative to multiculturalism, and it is a framework that focuses on commonalities, drills down to what we have in common, what we value, and begins there, once we have an appreciation for one another. Juergensmeyer's redirection of theology is another tool. That's not a new phenomenon, and it's proven useful in religion and politics, if you will. Without redirection of theology, we would not have experienced the Reformation, or Vatican II, or other religious political milestones that impacted the political landscape. Finally, I found that education is essential. To know ourselves, we've got to learn of ourselves, and we will counter much of the fear associated with other faiths if we're knowledgeable of the tenets of our own faith, the tenets of the other's faith. And it's a beginning point. It won't solve. It will not solve the issue of a radical Islamist. It will not solve the issue of any radicalized religious terrorist. But it's a beginning point to understand the majority, because as Hoffman and other researchers tell us, the minority has hijacked the religion. It is using it against us, but using against the majority Muslim as well. So understanding the majority, I suggest, is a way to deal with the minority radicalists of any religious terrorism.
You described your thesis writing process as peeling back the layers of the onion. And it sounds like every time you peeled back a layer, something new was revealed.
That's true.
To be able to approach this and think about what don't we know about the other religions, and then discovering that we as a society don't know a whole heck of a lot about our own religions, I think is absolutely fascinating. You mentioned some education and increasing our own education and self-knowledge about what faith means to us or what faith maybe doesn't mean to us. Do you have a recommendation for how that can be more widespread throughout the United States?
I do, but I think the concluding comment here that answers that question is there are reasons for war. There are reasons for dramatic allocation of resources. There are reasons for policy changes. There are reasons for changing education and education policy. Religion in education has been constitutionally challenged by those who would cite separation of church and state. And it's been ruled more than once that we can teach about religion in our public education academic environment. We can't teach about a religion. And I suggest that's the beginning point. We begin to teach about religion, not a particular religion, not pro or con, but about all religions. And in doing that, I think we then are in a position, we put ourselves in a position of informed, educated, literate decision makers. And we don't find ourselves in a position, as we've been accused, as a majority would say, that in response to 9/11, we countered their cosmic rhetoric, their accusation that this was a war of good versus evil, that we countered it with cosmic rhetoric, with terms like axis of evil and crusades. I would suggest that on either side, terms can be and will be taken out of context, but those are powerful words, and we need to know what we mean when we use those words, where we're coming from, and so that the reasons for war are informed and they're educated and we're literate on those issues, and that allows for the majority to consent from a knowledge base, and that I would suggest is success.
Thank you for sharing your research with us, Julie, and for peeling back the onion for us and shedding some light on some of these ideas about how we perceive religion of others and our own religion. Thank you for sharing that, and thank you for being with us here today, Julie.
Thank you for having me.